You are listening to another episode of the Rogue Patriot, where we are taking the word patriot back. I really need to come up with a better tagline. Anyway, this show, we've got a somewhat educational topic for you.
Yeah. So the topic of this episode is going to be, are you really Republican? To expand on that, basically, what is Republican by definition? And what are your actual values? What are you voting for? Does that line up with the actual definition, the actual meaning of Republican? So we're going to name off some topics, and that's in the Republican, or rather just topics that Republicans you'll see supporting a lot. We're going to talk about those, and we're going to talk about whether they actually fall into the Republican definition and what it means.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is more of a, I guess, academic kind of podcast because, well, for a little bit of background, this show is actually the only thing my formal education has ever qualified me for, because I went to school for government and political science. It has long been a passion of mine, and I think that if people knew some of the things that I learned in the course of that education, they would be more informed as to their voting choices and actually how some of these things work. Now, before people go flying off the deep end with, well, yeah, I mean, that education liberalized you and all that stuff, that's not what we're talking about. I'm not trying to invalidate anybody's opinion here. I don't think either of us are. What we want to do is paint the picture of what you're saying you are versus what that thing actually is.
Yeah.
So, just like the way that many other things are categorized, if you call yourself a Republican or a Democrat, this is kind of regardless of the liberal conservative terms. Those are a little bit newer in the in pop culture, I guess. Both Republicans and Democrats have a founding ideology or collection of ideologies in political science. So today we're going to talk about the founding ideals that the Republican Party claims it's based on, and how those relate to the values of the country versus how the politicians are actually acting and things like that. So the founding ideology of the Republican Party, and this is a major ideology that was involved with the start of the country, one of the most revolutionary philosophical ideas when it came around. It's an ideology called classical liberalism. And classical liberalism was, like I said, it was a founding ideology of the country. It strongly advocates for civil liberties under a rule of law with an emphasis on economic freedom. Okay, so basically there are a handful of ideas that fall into the category of classical liberalism, and it's things that we'll talk about, and it seems very obvious that, oh yeah, these are basic American ideas, but there are a lot of ways in current law that, or in current politics, that those ideas are not being reflected. So classical liberalism, one of the founding ideologies, or one of the founding ideas behind classical liberalism, is the idea of voluntarism, meaning that two consenting adults can enter into contracts voluntarily without the state telling them what they can and can't do. That is a founding idea for personal freedom and individual liberty. Founding idea of the country is that, basically two consenting adults can do whatever they like to do with each other as long as it doesn't harm somebody else, right? That's a very American idea. Some people believe that to stronger than others, but in general, that's a founding ideology of the country. Also, economic freedom, it falls under the classical liberalism title as well. Now, this is, like I said, the Republican Party says that, classical liberalism is their founding political philosophy idea and their guidance. But that doesn't mean that the Democratic Party is like the opposite or anything. They're both kind of two wings of the same bird on that. They just interpret things differently from that core of ideas.
And what's beneficial to the country.
Right, exactly. And the founding principle of each party is how strictly should we adhere to those original ideas
to try to achieve the goal of what's beneficial to the country.
Right, exactly. Yes. And so is it more beneficial to the country to be more socially progressive and try to help people where it's needed and try to head off problems economically or socially aggressively? That would be the more democratic idea. Or is it better for the country to basically be a lot more hands-off, have government be more hands-off, society more hands-off, and let people kind of figure everything out for themselves and see what happens?
Which is what Republicans define as freedom.
Yes.
So it's a more, well, I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying Republicans view it as being in the Republican Party means you are supporting the ideology of, or rather the concept of freedom, and you're embracing that more.
Right.
While as the left side is more government hands-on.
Even though what we just established is that both parties are founded on the idea of classical liberalism, which means individual freedom, civil liberties under rule of law, and economic freedom.
Yes.
It's just to the extent that those are respected changes a little bit. Mm-hmm. Not nearly as much as you would think watching mainstream media, though. Mm-hmm. They just differ a little bit. But here's the problem that we run into with both parties. Today we're just talking about the Republicans, but we're going to do another one of these on Democrats as well. There are this goes back to something that I complain about a lot. You can't say, "Oh, I'm this thing," and act totally different to what that thing actually is, and then expect me to believe you when you say, "Oh, I'm this thing." Okay? So you can't say that like, "Oh, I'm a Democrat, but I'm for no corporate regulation whatsoever. I'm for I'm for no taxes. I'm for whatever list of things that are very obviously not Democratic Party ideas." You can't tell me that, "Oh, I believe in all these things, but I'm a Democrat." Yeah. It just doesn't work that way. You don't define yourself however you want to. The way you act and the way you feel defines who you are, right? Yes. Sorry if that was unclear. But so here's the thing. There are a lot of people in the right of center media world that love to rail on socialism and love to fearmonger about socialism. And we've talked about this before in different areas of what socialism actually is and why their fear is misplaced. But the problem is with that, there are founding Republican Party ideas that they say they promote, that they say are part of the party baseline, that are actually socialist, that just are socialist programs. Now, one thing I want to note before we dive into the specifics here is that classical liberalism has an emphasis on economic freedom and the free market capitalism. So that basically means that the economy should be you can think about it like the stock market, should be unregulated. Corporations should not have regulations, whether it's financial regulations or environmental regulations or safety regulations. Businesses are to operate freely, and if a business is doing bad stuff, people won't buy that business's goods and services, so it'll go out of business and things take care of itself. That's the root of free market capitalism. That would be a pure capitalist system. That is economic freedom, basically. It means the government can't go tell you, "Oh, I don't like the steel that you're making, so I'm going to shut you down." Okay? Yeah.
But obviously we do have things in place like regulating environmental
yes, absolutely.
policies and stuff for factories and stuff, which makes sense.
Yes. Okay, so now this is where the distinction comes in. So on the Democratic Party has an emphasis on what's called a mixed economy. So you have free market economy, which is, like I just said, free market capitalism, almost completely unregulated, and may the best provider of a good and service win. And then a mixed economy is what our economy is in America, and it's what the economies are of the countries in Europe and a lot of the countries around the world, where there are mostly free market elements, free economic elements, but then there are also areas that are regulated because it's better for the public for them to be regulated.
Yeah.
It's better for the public for chemical plants not to be able to dump their hazardous waste into waterways that people are then going to drink and are going to get in the ground, and it's going to come up in your crops and your livestock's going to eat it.
And you get cancer
right.
and stuff like that.
It's in the public interest not to have those things happen.
Yeah.
That is not a free market idea. That is a mixed economy idea. So it's a little bit different there. The Republican platform is not in favor of a mixed economy. It's in favor of free market. Now, Republican
Which means
politicians,
those factories could
right,
dump all this pollution, affect your crops, you get cancer, all of that.
Yeah. Now, and that is what the founding documentation means. When you say that your party is founded on classical liberalism and free market economy, that's what that means. Okay? So now, what happens when you start building these systems that you say you're pro free market, free economic freedom rather, but you start building these systems that are exempt from the free market? Well, what that means is now you have a mixed economy, which the modern mainstream media calls socialist.
Okay, so before we go more into the mixed economy with industries, companies, and stuff like that, what does it mean more if you rewind back to personal freedoms and personal liberties? Being Republican, what does it mean from that standpoint in your individual life, your personal life?
So this is there's going to be a divide here between, between the founding ideology of the Republican Party and what most people who call themselves Republicans think. There's a difference there.
Exactly.
But the founding ideology when it comes to civil liberties, personal freedom, means that, and this is rooted in classical liberalism, it means that you have the freedom to act as however you want unless it, number one, harms somebody, or number two, infringes on somebody else's personal freedom or civil liberties. So that means that, there's a million different examples that you could use of this. One of them would be the idea that the government can regulate somebody consuming marijuana. That is an idea that is the opposite of protecting civil liberties, because consuming marijuana consuming marijuana is a victimless crime. It is one person making a choice for their own body, which is by default the definition of a civil liberty. Now, the arguments there are, well, okay, how did that person get marijuana? Was anybody harmed in that process? What are the circumstances surrounding it? You can go way in the weeds on that issue. I just wanted to give an example there. Another one is gay marriage, or going back a couple decades, just gay people being together at all and having any kind of sexual contact, or going back a little bit before that, interracial people having any kind of romantic contact whatsoever. Those are all issues that are fundamentally a civil liberties issue, where there is no victim because of these people entering into a consensual agreement. It only has to do with them and their bodies. Therefore, under the founding doctrine of the United States of America and under the doctrine that the Republican Party itself says it ascribes to, that conduct should all be permitted.
Because it means no government involvement in their personal life, not in corporate.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because there was no victim in any of those actions. There was no victim. And number two, it doesn't infringe on anybody else's freedom.
It's basically their personal rights.
Exactly.
Like owning a gun or anything.
Right. And that, yes, all of that falls into civil liberties, which falls under classical liberalism.
Okay.
Yes.
So back to the mixed economy comment.
Yeah. Okay. So with the mixed economy, now, like I said, what the mainstream media, especially, it's really only the right of center media, not just extreme right, but just anything on the right, is confusing a mixed economy with a socialist economy. And a socialist economy is also called a planned economy. I know there's a lot of like jargon and vocabulary in this, but you need to know this to be able to understand these issues. That's the only way you can do it. So a planned economy is an economy where the government makes all the decisions about where the resources go, whether that's manufacturing things, whether it's people who have jobs, who doesn't have jobs, what it controls how much money you have, all of that. That is a planned economy. There is not one country in the history of the world where a planned economy has worked and led to a successful country, with the exception of maybe China. But China was not really successful on the world scale until they began implementing some capitalist elements in their economy. So what the majority of successful countries around the world have, including the United States and the countries in Europe, is a mixed economy. So that means that, for example, there are systems that are exempt from pure free market capitalism. And the Republican Party is very, on paper, says they are very opposed to anything socialist. But they're calling a mixed economy socialist, and there are elements of a mixed economy that they support very vigorously. Mm-hmm. An example of that would be the Veterans Administration. The Veterans Administration operates a healthcare system and a social safety net system that is exempt from free market capitalism. And that system is, because it is exempt from free market capitalism, is by default an element of a mixed economy, which they are calling socialist. That's just how it is. Anything that we all pay a little bit of tax for and a percentage of the citizens get a benefit for is what is now being called socialist.
Yeah.
And is it actually socialist? Yes, it is. Yes and no. It is a mixed economy that has socialist pieces.
But I think what could cause issues is people hear the word socialist and they will be like, well, no, that's a negative thing. Right. And obviously having the VA is not negative.
No. Now, the most extreme people speaking about the VA in particular, the most extreme people in the conversation think that there should not be a Veterans Administration, that veterans should just get vouchers that grants them health care and social services at various private companies that handle it. That's a whole other ballgame. And really, that would still be socialist. That would still be a socialist system, because even though they did not get, there's not a whole healthcare system that's exempt from free market capitalism, still everybody is paying into a pot that is then going to pay for soldiers' healthcare. Directly or indirectly, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think we all, I just have to say this, I think we all can agree that our veterans deserve a program where, they're taken care of. I mean, they've given enough to this country.
Yes. Of course.
Anybody who would argue with that, just get out of the country if you don't support our military.
Yeah, it's treasonous.
Yes.
It is an act of treason, in my opinion, to say otherwise. And so now, what did we just describe? We described a major Republican Party point that is socialist. Mm-hmm. It's a socialist system. Okay. What other points do they have? Well, another one is supporting first responders and benefits for them. Again, we're running into the same boat here. This is a socialist system. This is a community of people paying into a pot to help other people out. Which,
again, those people deserve it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. This is
just making sure to say that in case anyone misinterprets what we're.
Don't bastardize our conversation.
Exactly. This is something that they deserve. We're not saying, we're using the term socialism or socialist, so it's negative. So we're saying that let's get rid of the VA or first responder benefits. No, that's not what we're saying at all. But we are saying that this is something the Republicans stand really strong by, is supporting our veterans and our first responders, which is great, in my opinion. But what is that? When you look at its core, what are those programs that benefit our veterans and our first responders?
Yeah. And at the core, they are socialist. Yeah. So now those systems, both the ones we just described, excuse me, don't line up with the founding doctrine of the Republican Party.
Exactly.
Now, everybody's going to say that, oh, well, I mean, you can't be 100% strict on something. There's some things that are going to have to change. We're going to have to deviate a little bit. I would argue that they don't say that when it's somebody else's ideas.
Exactly. When it's saying that you support socialism or something, then it's no, you need to be 100%
right,
not socialist.
Even though they're not 100% not socialist.
Exactly.
But look, you know, how many times can a duck tell you it's a cat before you say, no, actually you're a duck? That's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So look, another one, another founding, I shouldn't say founding. Another main piece of the modern Republican Party is a strong support for religious, in particular Christian values in the government, in all arms of the government.
Whether it's keeping prayer in school, Bibles, God in the pledge, that sort of thing.
Yeah, or having religious ideas involved in the legal system, whether it's punishing some things more harshly because they are amoral according to your religion, or whatever.
AKA abortion.
Yeah, abortion is an example of that. Also, we did an episode on underage sexual contact.
Yeah,
that's another example. Now, where in the founding ideology of classical liberalism and civil liberties, where does that idea fall? Well, the answer is it doesn't. It's nowhere near that idea. Look, the country was in part started explicitly for religious freedom, and not just your religious freedom, everybody's. So the idea that religion or a religious view of morality should be enforced in the government is exactly forget classical liberalism. That is exactly opposed to the founding of the country.
Personal rights, personal freedom.
Yes.
Personal liberty.
And how dare you call yourself a patriot by supporting that? Because you are not.
That's not to be ashamed. Now, having said that, that's not saying be ashamed of being Christian or whatever religion you are. I'm just saying Christian. Because you hear about that more being pushed into our government. But it's not saying be ashamed of being Christian or, not to preach the word of God or whatever calling you feel that you have in that. But it is to say that forcing or mandating religion into our government system is not Republican, because
it's not American, period.
It's not it's not American. It's not patriotic. It's inflicting on someone's personal rights, their personal views.
On somebody else's. So violates the concept of personal liberty or civil liberties number 2, which is your quote unquote liberty cannot infringe on somebody else's quote unquote liberty.
Yeah. And that's where it's hard. And speaking from experience, it's hard to I'm Christian, but I'm also American, but being able to draw the line in between the two and realize that you have to separate them.
Yeah,
for what you're standing for. That's not to say that, I'm just going to forget God when I'm trying to be American because I can't have God in my life and be an American. But, I'm not going to stand with my country if I want to keep my religion because, again, I can't have my country and, God at the same time. It's just saying there's a very, very fine line and you can't mix the two.
Right. It never works. And you cannot tell me that you are the most American, that you're the most patriotic, that you are the most like the founding fathers and feel that way.
Yeah.
You
can probably be the most religious.
Sure.
You can be the most religious by trying to force your religion into our government system.
You can be a zealot. Yes. And act that way.
Yeah.
And I would invite you to move to Iran or another country that works like that.
Exactly.
Because let me tell you something, none of you people who are stealing the word patriot, none of you would want to live in any place that works that way. Yeah. Period. Zero. Yeah. Zero. And that includes Russia for all you people that are like, I'd rather be Russian Democrat. Anyway. Okay. So another founding, or I keep saying that. I keep saying this wrong. Another idea that Republicans frequently spout that is as it relates to their founding ideology. Jesus, tripping on my words today. Okay, so something else that we hear a lot, and this is evident all throughout American society, and it just depends on which side of the political spectrum you fall on as to what opinion you're going to have. But what it boils down to is, well, my people, my extremists have the right to their own expression. I said right, the right to their expression, but your extremists don't have the right to their expression.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You get that a lot from people.
A lot.
On both sides. It's
yes, this one
I'm going to say my side, but you're not allowed to say your side. And
this is completely unanimous.
Yeah.
Okay. So a couple years ago, I think it was 2017, it was when President Trump was newly-ish president. There were marches from white supremacy groups in Charlottesville, Virginia, where they were walking. I can't help but laugh because it's so stupid. All these sad-looking white people marching down the street holding tiki torches. And do you not remember this? This was incredible.
Okay, I try not to. If it's something with people being stupid
no,
or
it's
a bunch
fine.
of political stuff.
Yes, okay.
I try to.
Yeah, no, look,
it.
I'm a, I nerd out over this shit. So I'm not, no expectations. I'm just saying. I'm just asking if you remember or not.
I may be talking about politics with you, but I'm not really a political person because I view people
absolutely.
Are so hateful over politics. I only discuss these things out of curiosity and trying to educate myself, and also getting my own opinion of idiots who think that they're educated.
There you go.
And they're not. Like getting that out there. That's why I do this. But I do not nerd out on political stuff because I think too much of it involves hatred.
Oh God, it does. This is a great example of that.
Okay.
So yeah, it was like 2017. A bunch of sad-looking white people who were quote-unquote white supremacist, neo-Nazi groups, people like that, marched through Charlottesville, Virginia, holding tiki torches. I don't remember what their cause was, but I'm 100% sure it was something stupid. And so the response was, from the right, they have the right to express themselves that way.
Okay.
I don't agree with them necessarily, but they have the right to express themselves that way. They... Under the U.S. Constitution, under the ideology of classical liberalism, I'm sure they didn't say that because nobody knows that term, but they have the right to express themselves, even if it's hateful expression. They have the right to do it.
Okay.
Be it nobody's harmed in the process. Okay.
Okay.
So now, 2020, what riots have been taking place everywhere? What protests have been happening constantly? Police brutality. Black Lives Matter. Who magically doesn't have the right to express themselves now? All of the causes that are not on the right side of the spectrum politically. Yeah. So what do we have here? We have a case of my extremists are okay, or at least protected, even if I disagree with them. Your extremists aren't. Your extremists want to burn down America. Your extremists hate the country. Your extremists this and that. Mm-hmm. And basically, it's just a case of bad vision. So you can't have a system that exempts bad behavior from people who agree with you, but punishes bad behavior from people who don't agree with you. What would that be? That would be fascist. So, and also communist and a bunch of other bad shit. Basically, it's not good. It's not good. It's not American. It's not a part of classical liberalism.
Repeat that. It's not American.
There we go. Not American. So if it's not American, it definitely shouldn't be Republican or Democrat. I mean,
it shouldn't be either because saying, I think people do this a lot, saying, well, it's not American, so it shouldn't be Republican is like saying that Republicans are more American than Democrats. And
yes,
that's not right. Don't confuse that because Republicans and Democrats, if you look at their definition, I'm not talking about you people that call yourself something that you're really not. And you think that you should run the whole country. I'm talking about, by definition, Republicans and Democrats are both trying to do good for the country. They just have different ways of getting there.
Yes.
It's like, the tortoise and the hare. They ran the race two different ways. They both had a way to get to the finish line, though.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example. And if you're extremely cynical, then you should think they're both out equally trying to screw us all.
Exactly.
But the one party is not more American than another. I'm sorry.
They're both
It's
just
not.
trying to run the country in the best way that they know how, off of their own beliefs and morals.
Yes. And frankly, if you are opposed to somebody doing that, you're stepping right on that treason line.
Yep.
Because it is fundamentally American to be able to express your political opinions.
And if you don't think someone has the right to do that, you need to move to a communist country.
Right. Now, just to finish up what we were just talking about, again, this is not a show where we are saying, hey, our opinion on this issue is this, and so they should have felt this way. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is saying this is the founding ideology of this party, and this is how they're acting. Look at how different they are.
Look at what they say that they stand for, or by definition they stand for, and look what they're actually standing for, and look at what the people they are voting in actually push.
Right, exactly. Let me tell you something. The American Revolution, which as we've said 1,000 times in the show, was founded in classical liberalism, was completely enmeshed in rioting. So much so, there was so much rioting, guess what? It turned into a war. Oh my God, a revolutionary war. That's how it started. It didn't just start with two people just declaring battle against each other. No, there were riots. There was the Boston Massacre. There was the Tea Party. These were not like cute little dainty events. At the time, they would have been received in a stricter way than the police brutality riots have been this year. Significantly. It would be like, we would call it another civil war if it was equal now as to what it was then. There's just no comparison. It would tear the country apart, obviously, because there would be somebody declaring revolution. So, next point that we have is the idea, and these terms came around, I think, in the Reagan era. So I might be dating myself a little bit here. But they've permeated through the conversation as to what the Republican Party actually is. And that is that two of the founding principles of the Republican Party are that of low taxes and small government. And the problem is that pretty consistently neither of those things happen from the Republicans. So this is a hard one to talk about because the examples are so huge as to how it's not working this way that it's going to be challenging to distill what's going on. Now, it would be hard to govern in the modern times on a platform that would consistently reduce government income and spending and reduce civil program or community-based programs. It would be really hard to do that, which I think is why it hasn't happened. But regardless, you can't say you're all about this one thing and then never act that way and be surprised when people call you out on your shit. So here's the deal with the low taxes thing. Republican presidents and Republican administrations love to pass tax bills in their first term in power that don't really do much. And this is evident from tax bills passed by Donald Trump, by George W. Bush, by Ronald Reagan. Not sure if George H.W. Bush passed a tax bill or not, but he probably did. But his presidency was pretty insignificant anyway, since he was only one-term president. So don't hate me for saying that. Holy shit. I don't think anybody likes him anymore anyway. But
it switches who they like.
It's so
anyway.
Oh my God, it so does. Because let me tell you something. George W. Bush and Donald Trump are as opposite as Donald Trump and Barack Obama. Like, they are so polar opposite. It is hilarious that they are in the same party, quote unquote, in the same party. So here's the deal. These tax plans that come out do a lot for a small number of people and nothing for most people. That's kind of how it works. And I'm not saying that they're all bad, but they don't have the impact that you would expect coming from a party that is all about low or no taxes. So there are independent assessments that are done on what the impact of these tax plans actually is. Happens all the time. The Congressional Research Office is one of the institutions that runs these reports. They are apolitical, And people will argue on that, but I'm sorry, reality does not always match your political ideology. It just doesn't. Reality is undeterred.
Go ahead and get your tissues, because that's going to make you cry.
Yeah, exactly. Reality
Somebody's
does
breaking
not
that to
care.
you.
Reality does not give a shit whether there is a D or an R in front of your name. Things are what they are. It just is that way. Instead of bitching and moaning about it, how about you do something that actually makes an impact instead of crying about why nobody thinks what you're doing has an impact?
That means stand up for what you want to, stand up for what you actually stand for and believe in, and actually do research, and then vote for the correct people that match that.
Yes, exactly.
Not just who has an RD, depending on which side you're on, in front of their name or beside their name.
So the tax plan passed by President Trump in his first year or two of power did very little for the majority of people. I mean, it's look, okay. And people will say, oh, well, I mean, it saved 90% of the public on their taxes. Dude, is saving $50 going to make or break you in a year? Does it matter? Does saving $100 make or break you? Like, I'm sorry if I sound like all elitist and rich here or something, but if a new president's tax plan saves me $300 a year, my mind is not blown. It kind of doesn't matter.
Well, with the paychecks they're making, and especially with how much Donald Trump had before he was even in office, it's
so unbelievably insignificant. Yeah. But if it saves if it saves the majority of the population 5%, by God, they're the best president ever. They lowered our taxes. Dude, cut that shit out. It's just not true. The same thing happened under George W. Bush. These giant tax plans don't really do that much, and they certainly do not reduce government income or spending that much. Like, there's just not that much of a difference, but it's this big flag. Oh, we passed a tax bill that we're saying is saving people this much money every year.
I'm seeing dollar signs.
Yeah, look, the statistics is the biggest liar out of them all. You can make numbers do whatever you want them to do. So that's the taxes argument. If you disagree with me, the Rogue Patriot podcast at gmail.com. Send in your complaints there, or comment or whatever, or give me 1 star somewhere. I don't care.
Give me your evidence.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll
me
keep
your
saying
evidence.
that for everyone in case y'all don't know. Give me your evidence and
because
your facts.
We are in the middle class. We have lived through the past several presidents. We are not millionaires because some douchebag passed a tax plan. We're just not. We're not millionaires because of the Democratic tax plans under Bill Clinton or Barack Obama either. That's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying. So,
well, we also graduated in a recession. So
yeah, that's true.
Which is great. I'm sure that's going to be blamed on the millennials eventually, if it's not already. But,
I know. We were 15. You bastards. All right. So the other point, and this is another huge one, is Republican Party is the party of small government. Okay. So that doesn't really mean much all by itself. How do we put that into perspective? Well, the only way that I can see to do that is by saying you're the party of small government. That means you are for less departments, less services, less employees, less buildings, everything. The government is supposed to shrink, whether it's local, state, federal, whatever. It's supposed to shrink. Now, that idea might be true at a state and local level in terms of people who say they're Republicans actually do that at the state and local level. Maybe, probably depends largely on the state. Where it doesn't ever happen is at the federal level. So here's a great example. Donald Trump started the Space Force. New branch of the military. What's the military? Military is kind of a wing of the government. Mm-hmm. They're all paid by the government. They're all paid by taxpayers. Okay? All right. Not a great example, right? Because that's to defend. I mean, there's a million reasons. I'm not saying that was a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not a small government thing. Okay. George W. Bush. Great examples here. George W. Bush started massively empowered he didn't start the Department of Education. He massively empowered the Department of Education by creating the No Child Left Behind Act, by passing it, championing it, whatever, which mandated federal standards for schools in the country so that it would work to standardize our level of education across the country, so students in Louisiana were graduating with the same level of education as students in South Dakota, Maine, Georgia, California, whatever. So not a small government thing. So not a small government. And it's not really a free market capitalist thing either. It's really not a Republican thing. Sorry. And at the time, he was like one of the most far-right presidents that we've had in the modern political era. Super not small government. All right. Something else he did. Formed the Department of Homeland Security, which combined a bunch of smaller departments across the government, but started the largest bureaucracy with the largest budget, with the most employees out of any wing of the government. How is that a small government thing? And now, I don't think Trump has talked a whole lot, or the Republicans in the past 4 years have talked a lot about small government. But between 2000 and 2008, holy shit, they did. Oh my God, they did. So much so they wouldn't expand veteran benefits under the VA because, it's a big government thing if we help the veterans. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. But we can do it over here because I like it over here. We can expand it over here because I like that.
Making exceptions.
Yep. No, you can't do that. You can't do that and also call yourself 100% Republican or 100% Democrat. You can't make exceptions to your base ideology left and right and then expect us to still believe you.
Yeah, so, you can do it. We just won't believe you, and you'll look like an idiot in the process.
Right. And then expect us to trust you on basic definitions like what socialism means.
And it shows how uneducated you are on the ideologies of America.
Yeah, on the founding ideologies.
Which
Absolutely.
you claim you know so much because you're fighting for your gun rights and waving a rebel flag and yelling that you're a patriot of America.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. I think gun rights is an excellent next topic.
Yep.
So, here is an example of something that perfectly lines up with the founding ideology of the Republican Party, which is classical liberalism, civil liberties, that is gun rights. So this is one area where the Republican Party actually is doing justice to their founding ideas. So the Republican Party platform, for the most part, is opposed to the majority, if not all, new gun regulations. Very much pro Second Amendment, as it should be. Those kinds of things. So that one they're in lockstep with the classical liberalism, civil liberties idea of that. Now, where we run into issues is that during President Obama's tenure, there's a lot of history in this podcast, and there is in a lot of our shows because you need context to understand these issues. Stop looking at things like it's the first time you've ever seen it and understand the scope of what's going on so you can make an informed decision. Okay.
Informed and educated.
Right. So where am I going with this? Now, under the Barack Obama administration, one of the biggest criticisms from the right was that the administration was constantly pushing for new and more gun regulations while not enforcing gun regulations that are currently on the books that would prevent the majority of gun crimes. Okay. What does that mean? Very briefly, there are a number of gun statutes that are there are a number of things that are federally illegal to do with guns that the federal government doesn't really prosecute people for. They just don't care to. And to the extent to where, and a great example of this is, it is federally illegal to buy a gun for somebody who is not legally able to buy a gun. Very basic idea. In 2012 or 13, there were 70,000 cases of people doing that were sent to the Department of Justice. Only 14 were tried. They just don't do it. It takes away time from other things they're doing, whether they're underfunded, whatever, they don't do it. That was a huge criticism under the Barack Obama administration, and one that my personal opinion is a good argument that, yeah, if you want to make new laws, you need to enforce the ones you currently have. No better under Republican presidents at all. Nobody gives a shit about enforcing these very important laws. And the thing is, there are areas like this where enforcing the law more strictly lends more credence to your civil liberty because it's keeping the assholes out. It's keeping the people who are abusing it out. Look, if everybody ran into crowded movie theaters and yelled fire, we would have to, the government would respond by restricting what people can yell in public. And then you might have to wear a muzzle or something in public. And don't you even give me shit about that with a mask. Okay, anyway. So there's an example, a little bit of hypocrisy there. But for the most part, the gun rights argument falls right in line with the Republican Party's founding ideologies.
Yeah. And gun rights, it is your right to own guns. But, when you have one side, as people say, trying to take them away, or in, actual cases, just making more regulations, instead of if they put the effort, instead of making more laws and regulations, actually put it into, regulating what's already there, then yeah, it'd be a lot better.
Right. If you want to see
for both sides. Both sides.
Yes. And for the country, it is better to if a law is important enough to be passed, it should be enforced. And if you're not enforcing it, it needs to be taken off the books so it's not a law anymore. That's another huge issue with the country.
With the ones, and this is going to kind of, I guess, talk bad on the left side, is that if you have the law there and you're not concerned about putting the effort into regulating that law, but yet you're sitting here saying that, we need to take guns away from citizens and stuff, you look like an idiot when you're not even trying to regulate what's already there to make sure that bad people are regulated.
Yes.
Like, dumb things are happening when there's a law out there to already prevent it from happening, but you're not pushing to regulate that. How about start with what's already there? And then if that doesn't work, and it actually doesn't work from the efforts being put into it, then let's discuss removing guns.
Right.
But until you have taken the proper steps, don't talk about taking someone's rights away. Yeah,
exactly. Or limiting them at all. Because you can pass a million laws. If none of them are enforced, none of them are going to do any good.
But that goes bad on the Republicans because, like you said, it's no better under a Republican president.
No, or a Republican attorney general. It's not. And the party of law and order should be better about that than they are.
And it would benefit both parties to just have a law that obviously was put into place for a reason to be regulated.
Yes. Yeah, because these are, look, I'm not hey, we need to make a law about everything guy. That's just not my personal opinion. I don't think that falls in line with classical liberalism. At heart, I am a classical liberalist. I'm just a little more pragmatic than some of the people who say they are. But there are a lot of those laws that are good that need to be enforced, and we would have a different country if they were. So those are some examples of contradictions on a large scale.
Yeah, a large scale, and what Republicans support that in reality doesn't actually line up with the definition of being Republican.
Right.
But are really, really big topics on the Republican side of what they stand by.
Yes.
Gun rights, religion and government, supporting first responders, having something for our veterans. All these are big things that are, really taken up for and talked about on the Republican side, but do not follow the Republican guidelines, I guess you could say.
Yeah, the founding doctrine.
Exactly.
Yep.
That was what Republicans support. Let's just talk about something that they're against. Like,
all right.
Okay, so with Republicans, two of the main things that I hear about. Let's start with one, gay marriage.
Yeah.
You hear all about gay marriage. Republicans. What year was it when it was legalized?
2010, I believe.
2010. Yeah, 2010. Okay. So not long after I graduated. I knew it was like around there. I just couldn't remember when.
I hope I'm right on that. If I'm wrong, it's within 2 years or so.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's hard to remember. It's hard to remember because there's a Supreme Court case and that didn't trickle down to the states for a little while. So,
yeah. So gay marriage. Republicans, if memory serves me correct, pretty sure it does, fought that tooth and nail. Gay marriage should not have been allowed. I think it was mainly because, a lot of Republicans really flaunt their religious beliefs. I'm not saying everyone who's a Republican is Christian or religious. I'm just saying that if you look up at them as a whole, they really stand behind that religion and the government enforcing religious beliefs throughout the country. So I think that's why they stand by that gay marriage shouldn't be legalized idea.
Yeah.
Is because of their religious beliefs, which is fine personally. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. It's your religious belief. But speaking of it from a government standpoint, from what is legalized in our country, I don't think a government being able to enforce whether you can or cannot marry someone because of their gender is a Republican, value.
Right. So if it was, then it would have to be somewhere in the founding doctrine of classical liberalism and civil liberties.
There?
Yeah, not that.
Yeah. But one of the things that is main thing is no government involved in your personal life, having your personal liberties, your personal freedom. And a man being married to a man, a woman being with a woman, or someone just changing their sexual orientation, none of that harms anybody.
Nope.
It hurts their feelings when they're Christian and they feel like their religion or their Bible or their God is being attacked because of what someone is doing in their own household.
Right.
Might hurt their poor little feelings there, but it is not a Republican stance. And I'll repeat that. It is not a Republican stance. By definition, if you are saying you're Republican and then you are saying that, gay marriage should not have been legalized, then you're not Republican.
No, you are not. You might be Republican in name, but you are not following the guiding principles of civil liberties. The guiding principle of civil liberties is that you are free to do whatever you want unless it infringes on somebody else's freedom or hurts somebody.
I want to say this real quick. I wish that we could, in the work world, give ourselves the titles that people give themselves in the political world.
Oh, God.
Dear God, if you can call yourself Republican, but then be against gay marriage, you can be against gay marriage, but try to vote and think that you have a right to vote on someone's personal life decisions, which includes who they marry.
Yeah.
If that is okay for you to do as a Republican, and you can just give yourself the title Republican, I really need to be the fucking CEO of my company.
I'm the CEO of
I'm
the
just going to
universe.
give myself the title, and my company better just go with it that I work for.
Nothing else matters. It's just what you call yourself.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Insane. It's insanity. And to me, that is such an easy one to avoid because
it's not hurting anybody.
No, it's not. And what it is, they're trying to score cheap votes because, again, this is the whole, if I hold a Bible thing, I'm going to get every
like
Christian
I say with
on
Trump,
my side.
a photo with the Bible and he's called Christian.
Yeah, magically, he's the second coming.
And I will say that because, again, grew up in a Christian household, strict Christian household, grew up in a town full of Christians, and I do consider myself Christian. I don't follow exactly how everybody else does because I have my own opinions on that. But I have not seen one thing about Donald Trump that says he's Christian, except that he held a photo, and I think he put up the manger scene at the White House or something. Like they stuck with the tradition,
which
and
every president does, by the way.
Yeah, which.
I actually don't know that to be true, but I assume it is.
I don't think Obama did, but maybe he did. I don't think he did though. But I mean, what the fuck do I care?
Yeah.
How is that proving that you're this Christian I need to follow? How is that saying that
cheap votes?
Cheap
is
votes.
What it is.
Cheap
and
votes. Because it doesn't. It's certainly not proving that you're Christian because you hold a Bible. If that's the case, I could be anything. I could straddle a motorcycle real quick and be the world's best motorcycle driver or stunt driver or whatever.
I'm gonna hold a scalpel. Now I'm a surgeon.
Yeah. So just take a picture with something and you have a whole different career path or religion. Or whatever, but that's another topic that gets on my nerves of people calling presidents Christian or not Christian. Like you don't know, you cannot. And I think you've said this before, but I always forget how you worded it with me one time when I was discussing my religion with you. Is you can't determine someone's heart, basically what's in their heart, and isn't that what God does
by their actions? Right.
So exactly. Yeah. So I know people that would say that, this person really helps their community. They're giving to charities. They do for children. They help the homeless. They do all that. Well, you'd think, oh, that's a great Christian right there. And they can say they're Christian, but I know people who are atheists who do that.
Right.
So therefore, you're looking at them because your own moral ideas and your own belief system. And then you're giving them a title that doesn't actually belong. And they can say whatever. Yep. They just got to say it, and they just got to take a picture with the Bible, and all of a sudden, they've won Christian of the Year, I guess.
Everybody tends to have rose-colored glasses towards people they feel are similar to them.
Yeah.
It's the silent prejudice.
Yeah.
I mean, really. This is such gay marriage, and they're pulling back from it now because it's so unpopular in the country. And this is not just a Republican hypocrisy either. There were the majority of people in the majority of elected Democrats were not pro-gay marriage until very recently. Mm-hmm. But it's not completely opposed to their founding ideologies, because the Democrat founding platform, which we'll talk about in a different show, does allow exceptions in civil liberties for certain things. So it's a little bit different for them, because the Republican founding ideology means that you have civil liberties unless it hurts somebody or infringes on somebody else's liberty. Gay marriage does not do that.
It just hurts your feelings if you don't believe in it
Right.
because of your religious beliefs.
Such an easy issue to have never had this problem on, because, well, look, if you want to be the party of America and the party of freedom, then you have to actually be the party of freedom.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's not to say whether we support gay marriage or not. That is just going off of pure definition of what it is to be a Republican and what to stand by. And not standing by gay marriage being legalized was not Republican. So if you were against it, you were not Republican in that decision. Yep. Congratulations. You were more Democrat. And yes, I just called you a Democrat.
Oh, God.
Jesus.
The people that you voted for also apply to that rule.
We're going to I'm going to ask about that in a second. But first, let me bring up another topic that Republicans are against that I'm curious about, because I'm, I guess, different on this one, and that's abortion.
Okay.
So, Republican-wise, I think this is more difficult to say whether it's a Republican,
issue or not.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I see it, the whole dispute over abortion, it starts at, when do you determine a life is created? Is a life created at conception or at birth? That's where this comes down to, because if life begins at conception, then an unborn fetus should have the same rights and protections as any other citizen, because they are a human life, so they should have those same protections.
So I think where it would get a little bit confusing is where, like, okay, with gay marriage, that's somebody's personal rights, personal liberties. Well, if a woman's carrying a child, that's her body. And that's what people, so therefore, Republican-wise, if you look at it that way, Republicans should be for abortion because it's that person's rights. Now, my personal idea is that, no, it's not. It's not a Republican idea because it does hurt someone else. Because I'm totally against abortion. If I offend anybody for saying that, get the fuck over it. But I am against it. I'm not saying that a baby's alive as soon as the sperm hits, inside the woman. But definitely, if it's got a heartbeat, definitely.
So, and this is, the most recent argument that I've heard is that this is kind of a tough one to talk about, because this is such a huge topic in and of itself. But to me, the idea of, the argument of when does life begin exactly is not a good one, because there's no way to definitively know, because we don't understand consciousness. We don't understand life. We don't know what it means to be us. We don't know why fundamentally, scientifically, we are different in our brains than animals are.
Yeah, but if a baby's already inside the womb, just, showing emotions and stuff, which they have proven with ultrasounds and stuff.
Well,
and they, I have not done much research into this, but I've heard that they actually feel pain. So if they can feel pain and stuff, I mean.
Well, but the thing is, can they? does a reaction mean that's what's happening or not? Because they can't speak, so they can't tell you that's what's happening. You have to interpret their actions in a way that would make it look like one way or the other.
And this is where I'll argue with you on that. Sorry, really big on kids, and if you're gonna have sex, you need to know the consequences, and you need to take every possible action that you can to not get pregnant if you don't want to get pregnant. Don't try killing something because your ass didn't know how to stay off your back or off a dick or whatever. I probably offended a bunch of people. I don't really care. Stay away from sex or get on birth control, use a condom, take every single action that you can not to get pregnant.
Which birth control and condoms should be easier for people to get to avoid these situations.
They should, and I'm not going to argue with that, which again, Republicans fight against that, but whatever. That's, say you're against abortion, but then say that you won't give the methods to make sure that someone doesn't get pregnant and feel the need to get an abortion. But if you're going to say, okay, well, they can't tell us anything, we don't know what they're feeling. Well, what's the first memory you have? What's the first memory you have? What age? Do you have memories of when you're 2 months old? Do you have memories of when you're 5 months old? Can a baby tell us that they have a brain, or do they just respond with crying? Because they already have ultrasounds proving that a baby cries in the wound because it makes the same emotion, the same facial features. It's just when they're outside the body, outside the amniotic fluid, they can actually let out a cry. Are we going to consider that talking? Are we going to consider them having a mind of their own? So in reality, I guess you could kill a baby until, it starts to talk because you don't have any memories from then. So who's to say we were actually alive, or was our bodies just responding?
Yeah. No, I mean, that wasn't my opinion. I was just talking. So I don't have an answer to any of those questions.
I know. I'm saying in general for people who are like, oh, it's a woman's body, so she should have the right. No, it's not. You did something that creates another life. And if you want to base it off of, well, we don't know when they're alive until they're born. Well, who says that we technically become alive when we're born?
Well,
because you have a heartbeat in the womb. You have emotional expressions in the womb.
But I mean, just because, you kill an animal and it twitches after it's dead, the fact that it's twitching doesn't mean that it's not dead.
Okay, but if it's giving facial responses of emotions, and if it has a heartbeat. See, the thing is, if an animal twitches after it's dead, if its heartbeat stopped, we consider it dead, right? So if a child's in the womb and the heartbeat is going and it's having emotional expressions and stuff, would that not mean that it's alive?
Well, you can be brain dead without a heartbeat and no longer be conscious. I mean, sorry, you can be brain dead with a heartbeat but no longer be conscious.
Yeah, I know.
So, right. But the thing is, though, like, that debate is not great either, because there's no way to have a definitive answer on that, except now with functional MRI technology, you can MRI anybody and see what parts of their brain are lighting up from what
what makes you alive, the brain activity or the heartbeat?
Well, there's no answer to that, and the law has different descriptions. I mean, if it was anything with a heartbeat is alive and has the same protections, then it would be illegal to take people off life support. I mean, but it's not.
I kind of agree
because
with that
examples.
Too, because I think it should be illegal. It's not your life, so.
Well.
I mean, right, I think the difference is if you take somebody off life support and their body doesn't sustain them to keep them alive, then obviously their body was giving up. But the thing is, that's different with a child, with a baby.
But not always, because the thing is, people who, we're getting away from the civil liberties part of this conversation, but I mean, there are people who are in vegetative states who wake up from vegetative states, and if they had life support removed from them,
it wouldn't have clicked back in.
They would have never woken back up. And the thing is, a fetus can't support life by itself, even in a NICU, until 30 weeks or 26 weeks, something like. It takes a while of development. So prior to that, whose rights are more important? The person that we know is alive and talking to us, or
that
the
made
one that
a decision?
Guessing?
But that person that's alive and talking to us made a conscious decision for the most part. Now, this is where it gets iffy for me, Republican or Democrat, is saying you're against abortion, but then let's take a woman who's been raped or who has mental issues, or is raped and has mental issues, or someone who's going to die when having the child. Like, it's legit. The doctor has to come to them and say, okay, only one of you is going to survive. Make your choice. Yeah. Or both of you are going to die, most likely. So do you want to live and go ahead and get rid of the baby, abort the baby, or do you want to try to see this pregnancy through and, there's an 80% both of you will die.
Yeah.
That's where it gets a little bit of a gray
Yeah.
area. Should it be legalized for those people whose lives are at stake, who were raped, who don't have the mental ability to make decisions for another life? Should it be legalized just for them, but not for people who haven't been raped and haven't been, they don't have a reason to get the abortion, I guess you could say, besides lack of responsibility.
Yeah.
But, I think there could be a middle ground, but my personal opinion is it would have to be a middle ground for people like that versus people who just made the choice to have sex. Get over it. You're having a child. If you don't want it, set it up for adoption. Plenty of people want kids. There you go.
This is an area where the founding political philosophy of the country or of either party does not offer really much insight, except that this issue should be decided at the state and local level instead of at the federal level, because there's not a clear answer. And the fact that there is not a clear answer means that politicians should not make a decision for 350 million people.
Yeah.
They should make a decision for their locality.
Yeah.
And base it from there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the only way to do this. And there are a lot of different arguments that are similar to this that are handled in different ways, because you can argue that most people's civil liberties in some way could possibly infringe on somebody else's personal liberty. Is my liberty to own a gun infringing on your liberty to not have me shoot you? I mean, there are a lot of questions like that where there's not a great answer. And the country has a legal system that is designed to flesh those issues out and figure out where the actual, where the opinion lies. Probably why
it's more of a mixed economy instead of.
That is exactly why. Not just a mixed economy, but a mixed view of civil liberties in general. And that is not a Republican or Democrat thing to say. That's just how it is. Republicans do not support. I guess I should rephrase this. I've never heard of a Republican supporting somebody who's a convicted felon's ability to own a gun. I've never heard anybody do that. So this was decided years and years ago in the Supreme Court that no civil liberty is absolute. All civil liberties are subject to some restrictions so that we don't have societal chaos and anarchy. It's just figuring out where that line is where things get tricky. And the abortion conversation we just have is a great example of that, because this is something that the country or the individual states need to figure out where their heart lies on it and go from there. To me, there is nothing wrong with a very diverse political climate across the country. And the thing is, if you don't like what your politicians are doing, vote them out, number one, or move. You do not have the right to live. You don't have the right to bend your government exactly how you want it wherever you live. Sometimes you got to pick your ass up and move somewhere else that fits your ideas better.
So that brings me to, speaking of who you vote in, is just the meaning behind Republican, what they support, what they're against. So we've said, if you support these things that are socialist programs, you're not standing by the Republican definition. If you're against gay marriage, you're not standing by the Republican definition, but you're calling yourself Republican. What are the people that you're voting in that say they're Republican? What are they actually pushing once they're in office? You're sitting here seeing an R next to their name, and then you're voting them in, and then what are they voting for? Yeah,
exactly. And how closely does what they're voting for line up with what they're selling you?
Exactly.
And in my experience, when it comes to figuring out politicians' true intent, there is only one way to do it. And it's definitely not to trust them at anything they say and not take them at their word at anything they say. The only way to really get in the head of a politician, some people might argue with me on this, but is to watch them in their job. So if they are if they're current politician running for re-election or for election somewhere else, go watch the committees that they were a part of. Watch those live feeds. Watch them speak. Watch them explain themselves somewhere that's not a rally, where they're not talking to voters, where they're actually doing the work, you will be able to tell who's an idiot and who's not. Let me tell you something. If you watch videos of congressional committees, whether it's in the Senate or the House, you can tell whose IQ is what by the questions that they ask. So, great example of that, Democrat from Georgia, a guy named Hank Johnson, asked military leaders, maybe 5-6 years ago, if moving more servicemen, more military members to an island would sink the island. Look it up. It's on YouTube. The guy's name is Hank Johnson. He asked the military if moving more soldiers to Guam would cause Guam, which is an island, to tip over and sink. You're not going to hear him say stupid shit like that at a political rally. You need to watch them in their jobs to know where they actually are.
And what are they really pitching at, kind of at the rallies, but at their jobs too? Are they actually pushing for better systems in place, better programs, better ideas, better bills for the country, for everyone? Or are they just attacking the other side? Like, that's something you see with commercials and stuff, is like the commercial gives you it's so funny that these campaigns and stuff give you no information of what they stand for, anything. All the money is put towards, let's have someone speak and bash the opposite side, the opposite person running for office. And it's like, well, I got absolutely nothing out of that commercial. I have no idea what they stand for. Yeah. They're saying that this person wants to do this, this, and this. Okay, well, what do you want to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Does it, just because you're talking bad about them wanting to do that, doesn't mean that you're not for it, or that you're for something else, but it may not be what I want, you know?
Yeah.
So,
now I know Jim Bob's a baby raper, but who are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Were you groping women? I mean, the other one was, harming children.
Are you a terrorist? Did Osama bin Laden come back? I don't know who you are from this stupid ass ad you just showed me.
Yeah, and I think when they're putting a lot of effort into that, that's just spewing more hate. And if anybody really wants good for the country, and you can really suck my ass if you disagree with this, but if you want, I'm sorry, if you want good for the country, you are not going to want someone who's helping spew hate. And there are so many people just spreading hate left and right, and they act like they're doing something for the country because they're getting all the Republicans to hate the Democrats and all the Democrats to hate the Republicans. No, we're just the best country ever. And it's like, no, you're not. The best country ever would work together to become and stay and maintain the best country ever. Not sit here and spew hate about someone's family or something.
Which is how we got here. That is why the GDP of the U.S. is like $50 trillion a year, which is like 4 times China's GDP, which is the second largest economy in the world. That's why we are so crazy successful, is because we had those ideas. So don't abandon them now to talk shit on somebody.
Yeah, and
it's ridiculous.
Sorry, one of the things that got on my nerves the most, that wasn't too long ago, was when Trump became president. I can't remember her name. But it was the woman that had like his head decapitated.
Oh, Kathy Griffin.
There was that huge thing that his son seen it. People like, this is wrong. I agree. She was a bitch for doing that. That was ridiculous. Yeah. First off, it doesn't matter if you think, oh, he's not my president. Suck it. He is your president. It's Obama was our president. George W. Bush was our president. Bill Clinton. Yeah.
The Democrats and Kathy Griffin in particular was all fired up when there were crazy people calling themselves Republicans that were hanging or that were lynching effigies of Obama in trees and shit. They really didn't like that, but we can hold a severed head.
And it was wrong for those people to do that. You don't do that. First off, it is your president at that point and should be considered treason. That is horrible.
Yeah, and she got investigated by the Secret Service for
which
that too,
she
because
deserved.
It looks like a death threat.
Yeah, it was, and I think she should have served jail time for it. That was ridiculous. It was immature. So you were not helping. I'm assuming she's Democrat. Yeah. So the thing is, if I go off of that, it makes her whole party look stupid. It made your party, Kathy Griffin, whatever your name is, it made your party look stupid, and anyone who supported her made you look fucking stupid because you did not benefit anything in the country. That was nothing besides doing a low blow to someone. Which, if you're trying to do something, to educate people. You don't do shit like that. Yeah. Can we all be adults? Can we all be mature?
Yeah.
So, but it happens with the opposite side as well. I'm not just attacking the left side. I'm just saying that attacking the opposite side is achieving nothing. And instead, tell me what you're going to do to better the country.
Yeah. And a great example of a politician who says they are super with this party, but they're really not. Hillary Clinton was a senator in New York after Bill was president and before Obama was president. So between, I don't know if it was the whole time.
I have no idea what you're going to say about her because I literally can't stand her, but I'm pretty sure it's going to make her look like a dumbass.
I can't either.
Because
but a bunch of other people too, because it was in 2008 when she was running for president in the primaries before Obama won the primaries. The media machine against her was calling her the most liberal, most Democrat, whatever, the most socialist, blah, blah, blah. And she was saying that she's super liberal, super Democrat, all that kind of stuff. Bull fucking shit. If you look at her congressional record, she was at least down the line, and 30, 40 years ago probably would have been a Republican. Like, it's so not fucking true that it's not true to call them that. For whether they're calling it about them, saying that about themselves, or somebody else is giving them that title. A lot of people voted for her in that primary, and a lot of people voted for her in 2016 who thought she was super, super left-wing, super Democrat, represented women well, all this kind of stuff, but her record sucked whenever she was in power. It was just not good. That, I guess that is an opinion. Look at her record if you don't believe me. It's not very damn liberal. It's not very Democratic. Or it's not very of the Democrat Party.
I just think she's an idiot anyway.
There's a million politicians like that, but she's a big one because there's so much media for and against her at the time that you just heard that all the time. Like, oh my God, she's the most liberal. No, dude, no, not even close.
I think she was just whatever she thought she could get votes on.
Yes, which is what most politicians are.
Trump did the same thing. He's Republican. Shit.
Been a New York City Democrat for 60
years.
I
love that this dude's a freaking orange toupee and dude. And I'm sorry. I love that he's this rich, pompous asshole. I'm sorry, he was. And everybody knew it. Although I had somebody say he was America's darling.
That's hilarious.
For years.
And
I've never heard of that before. So where was America's darling? Like, why is he called that all of a sudden? Now he's president. But whatever. He was this guy that wore suits and always has this pouty look on his face. Sorry, he gets on my nerves. But now that he's president and he's claiming being Republican, again, I still don't think he's Republican. Not saying he's Democrat. I just think he's out for himself. But now all of a sudden he wears to his rallies, he wears an American baseball cap. That boy ain't never played baseball in his life, I don't think. And if he did, it was with a gold bat with his butler.
And it was
that was some Richie Rich shit, and he wasn't as nice as Richie Rich. Thank you very much. Guarantee you he was the asshole rich boy.
Oh, good
so
Lord.
All you Republicans talking about you for something, that man is for himself. He is not for this country. Oh, sorry.
As most
That's
of
my
them
personal
are.
opinion on him. This isn't anything that he's done. I know people, he gives to charities. Most rich people do. It's a tax break, you idiots.
Yeah.
If I was a fucking billionaire, I would do that too. It's a tax break.
Yeah.
It's called being smart.
And if the response is, oh, well, they're all just out for themselves, then quit waving their damn flag.
Yeah, vote independent
totally
or something.
They are mostly all politicians are just opportunists that are out for themselves. But what you don't do is see me with the politicians' faces tattooed on my face.
Or on your ass.
Yes, exactly. Oh, my God.
Putting the stickers on your vehicle and all that stuff. I'm voting for the lesser of two evils. And I hate it coming from, again, a Christian background. I hate it when people fucking say that. Evil is evil. So you're saying the person that raped the woman is better than the person that raped the man? Yeah. Or are you saying the pedophile is better than the person that just went and shot a whole family inside a house? Is that what you're saying? There is no lesser of two evils. Stop your bullshit. There is another path you could take. You could always vote independent.
Yep.
Or they're just get people, like, stop going to the campaigns and supporting the only two candidates that, have the most money to fund their damn campaigns. Just be like, nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Because if they don't pass those campaigns, if they don't pass those early voting times, then guess what? We got to find someone else. And maybe that's what needs to happen. And maybe we need to stop having titles with our political party so people just see those titles and that's what they go for.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, sorry, that'll get me heated, but
Yeah, me
especially Trump wearing a baseball cap. That gets me. I don't know why I can't stand seeing him in that, but it's like, stop it. You're not some country boy wearing your baseball cap and all that kind of it gets on my nerves.
On the Richie Rich note.
Oh, sorry.
Do you have anything further?
No, I think that's it. We need to wrap this up.
I think we nailed this topic. Summary.
Made it a little bit longer and went off a little bit, but
we did. I think it was good though. The summary is that just because somebody calls themselves a Republican, don't just trust them. You have to look at their values, or rather, no, let me rephrase that.
When you call yourself Republican, don't just believe yourself. Actually, look up the definition. Here's y'all's homework. I'm going to give out I should do homework after each of these podcasts.
Don't believe yourself.
Your homework is, don't believe yourself. Write down what your values are. Look up the definition of the party that you say you are part of. See if the values that you have, what you vote for, what you stand by, matches the definition or the values inside the definition of the party you say you belong to. Do that homework for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do that. Not that we're trying to prove you wrong or we're trying to get you to second. Well, I am trying to get you to second guess yourself because I want you to think.
You need to be sure.
Find yourself. Yes. Know yourself.
Yes.
So that you're always true to yourself.
Yeah, and the leadership that you help elect with and for all of us reflect the actual views of our society
and the actual views of you,
bullshit.
What you stand by.
Yes,
and that way, I think it'd be better for everybody if everybody did that.
Yes, if you are at all interested in politics, you need to look up classical liberalism and what that is.
Even if you're not interested in politics, if you want to vote.
Yes, if you want
to vote,
yeah.
Make sure that you are voting for what you believe in and stand by, because that, it's. I've heard a few people be like, "Well, I voted this person and they didn't do exactly as good as I thought, but we're stuck with them now." Like that kind of stuff. Well, did you do your research?
Yep.
Stuff like that. It doesn't take long. It's small steps to better the country. It's what we all should be doing. It's the effort we all should be putting in as citizens, and that is just to try to have America be the true definition of America.
Yep.
And just, have the best country ever.
Yep.
And I think everybody can agree with that. We want the best country ever.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So.
Well, hey, thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. This was a long episode, but it's hard to cover these topics quickly and get to where we need to go. Everything can't be 10-second sound bites. So that's just kind of how things are. But anyway, thank you for listening to another episode of the Rogue Patriot podcast. If you would like to contact us, please email us at theroguepatriotpodcast@gmail.com. This podcast is available on any podcast player that you can think of. Please subscribe and rate and comment on the podcast players. Also, the episodes along with other videos and other content is posted on the YouTube channel, which is called The Rogue Patriot. Please subscribe to that as well and click the notification button so you are notified when we post new videos. You have been listening to The Rogue Patriot, where we are taking back the word patriot. Thank you very much.